Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. As usual, we've got a lot of NBA news to break down. Unfortunately, on today's show, though, we have to start with something that hit the NBA world that is, devastating. Jerry West passes away at 86. A lot of people know him as the logo, of course, a legend, a Lakers legend, greatest executive we've ever seen in the sport. The things that he accomplished as both a player as well as an executive off the court, the things that he's meant to basketball, the things he's meant to basketball fans. Truly a sad day here for the NBA. So we want to make sure we start the show with that. Keith, I'm sure you have a very different perspective of Jerry West than I do, but just a massive figure for basketball. The league literally does not look the way it does right now without him.
Yeah, I mean, literally, we wouldn't have the logo that we have for the NBA without him. But it's so much more than that. I texted my dad because obviously, as old as I am, I have not seen him. I never saw him play, and I asked my dad. I was like, Jerry. First, he hadn't heard of it because he's not tuned in like that, like we are. So he was like, "Oh wow," he's like, "I remember watching him play the Celtics many times in the finals." And I said, what were your thoughts on him? And he basically said, like, you kind of expected every year the Celtics to win when I was a kid, because that's kind of what happened. But he said, you knew most years you were going to see Jerry West. And he said, we hated that guy because he was so good and he was so hard to beat. And that's the ultimate credit that you can give somebody, is when they're like, man, I hate that guy because we were afraid of him. Like, that is just like that. There's almost no better credit than you could give. And then my dad didn't really follow him beyond that. So from there, I'll pick up with my thoughts. I mean, most of our lives, we knew him as a executive, and he built championship teams repeatedly in multiple places, or at least had his hand in it. Never got the Grizzlies over the top to win a title, but helped build them up from being a team that was just kind of another team to being a very good playoff team. And then with the Warriors and Clippers, a part of teams that were very good, and what it total out to 9 total titles, 1 as a player and 8 as an executive. Like, that's crazy, man. That's like you're running out of fingers to put rings on at that point. And then I was blown away when I started looking at like his basketball reference page and then some other stuff. And I put it in a tweet. He was an all-star every year. 14 years, he was an all-star, every single one of them, 12 times all-NBA. And I don't know if that's because maybe all-NBA didn't exist. I don't know. Maybe he didn't make it. His last couple of years, I'm not sure. 5 times all-defense, and I believe that's because all-defense teams didn't exist in the early part of his career. He won a gold medal. He was the NCAA Final Four most outstanding player, won an NBA Finals MVP in a loss, which is really, really hard to do. You have to be incredible to pull that off. Just what a incredible career. Like, I really don't. There's no more words to it than that. I never got to interact with him anytime, as I'm sure you know. He would often be at Summer League. Anytime you were like, maybe I'll finally have a chance to introduce myself, there's like, well, I hope I'm not doing anything else the rest of the day, because the crowd of people waiting to talk to him was so deep. And just like, in that's also critical because he gave time to everybody. Like, wouldn't turn anybody away. I never saw him turn down a picture or an autograph or anything. And then with media folks and basketball, fans and hoop heads and everything else, always had a few minutes to talk to everybody. Like, just it's such a huge loss. I mean, this has just been a brutal week for the NBA with Bill Walton, Chet Walker, and now Jerry West. Like, no more. Like, we always say, half jokingly, turn injuries off. Like, let's flip this switch off for a while too. We don't need to lose any more legends.
Yeah. And it's funny. I actually did the exact same thing. I texted my dad and let him know and everything, because obviously he's not, like yours, not plugged into that kind of stuff, and he was, devastated. I mean, he wore 44 in when he played high school ball and everything because of Jerry West. This is just a tremendous loss for the league. Yeah, I mean, like I said over on Lakers Nation, there's a lot of people that are putting out the stats and his MVPs and all that sort of stuff, but And all of that is of course, incredibly important and a big part of what he meant to the league. We can add up all the titles and we can add up all of that, but what really strikes me is there's a lot of us who frankly aren't here right now if there's no Jerry West, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of fans aren't basketball fans right now if there's no Jerry. Like that's how big of an impact he had. I likened him too for a lot of Lakers fans. He was for that generation. He was that generation's Kobe. He was the Kobe before Kobe, essentially. That
Yeah.
he had that kind of connection. And so yeah, obviously a very sad day. And like you said, we've got 3 players here in the last week. This is rough, especially because this is the generation that you and I, to a degree, grew up on. The at least maybe at the tail end of some of these guys' careers,
Sure.
but these are guys who we saw sometimes in a different facet in terms of them operating on the sidelines. Nobody's going to forget Bill Walton's play-by-play stuff, or as an executive or something like that. But seeing this generation of players start to fade away here, this is it's tough, man. It's a tough day, that's for sure, and a tough day for the NBA to lose somebody like this.
Yeah, I want to share one more thing because I don't know if you've had a chance to read it yet. Woj over on ESPN wrote a pretty interesting. Basically it's like an obituary piece, but he said he said I sent him a text message of well wishes on his 86th birthday in late May. His health had been deteriorating, his time was short. He acknowledged that in his response and then requested, "Give me some NBA news regarding players leaving or signing elsewhere, please." And then he went on to explain, like, he was just so still locked in on, like, tell me what's going on in the NBA. And some Clippers folks have come out now with comments where it's like every day through the end of the season, he was texting us his thoughts and his updates. And one of the things that's been shared is they were often funny and often brutally honest about things. So, like, it almost, it's so sad that he's gone, but like that stuff brings such a smile to my face that like he was such a competitor all the way until the end that he was like, I need to know what's going on. And then like, here's what I didn't like about the way our team played today. Like that's just, I mean, that's like talk about like dedicating your life to something
Right.
like fully all the way to the end. Like that's incredible. I can't recommend enough. Jack McCallum wrote a really great book, and it kind of tied Jerry West, the player, with Jerry West, the executive with the Warriors, that incredible dynastic run with the Warriors, tied the two together and really told the story of Southern California basketball, or really California basketball, through Jerry West, like as like the lens for the entire story. And he alternates back and forth to like that I would say then and now. I mean, those Warriors runs were 8 years ago now it started, but
Sure.
like then Jerry West as a player to now Jerry West is working for the Warriors when he was. And it's a really great read. You get a really good insight into how driven this guy was and how much like he just like there's stories in there about how like he hated to lose and those kind of things, and how like it hurt him so much that he would drop his wife off at home after games and say, I'll be back, and go drive for hours on end, just thinking about how do I make sure this doesn't happen again, and those kind of things. And that competitor was in him all the way to the end. That's really says something. So yeah, tough. I think about our dads, right? Like
Sure.
my dad told me this was like 10-ish years ago when I can't remember who it was. I don't even think it was an athlete, but we were talking about something, and he said, I realized I was old when all my heroes started dying. And it was like, man, and then he was like, I don't want to be morbid, but it's gonna happen to you too. Like, when like your sports heroes start going, like that's when it really sinks in of like, man, like you just think some of these people are just gonna be here forever.
Yeah.
Then it's just further advice that I always give anytime something like this happens. Make sure those people who mean a lot to you know it while they're here to hear it, because you want them to know when they're still with us.
All right, let's move on. Otherwise, I'm not going to make it through this.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's go. Let's go here. God, none of this stuff feels important right now.
No, it doesn't. But you know what? It's funny. I thought about this today. We missed yesterday's show because we both had a million things going on.
Yeah.
And normally I would say, I know you are already doing reaction stuff on this topic for Lakers Nation. And I would say, let's go. But then when I was reading all these things about Jerry West was still working till the end, I'm like, sure he would appreciate. All right, now get back to work. You said your
Sure.
piece, because that's
Right.
another thing. The Woj thing. Woj asked him like, "Hey, congrats on making the Hall of Fame, third time as a contributor." And he's like, "Yeah, give it to the next guy." Now, what news do you have for me? Like, so I guess let's do the news.
All right, let's go. Let's go here. When we get to the draft, the Pelicans. I thought this was interesting. Might be looking to move back. We've talked about how there could be a lot of movement on draft night, which we're now a couple weeks away
from 2 weeks
from draft night. Are the Pelicans going to move back and then pick up assets? I looked at the Pelicans as a buyer on the market, but I'm also looking at the market and seeing there's a lot of buyers, a lot of buyers, and so maybe there's an opportunity here rather than just be an outright buyer and say, hey, we're going to try to pick up a piece to win right now, which is what everybody's doing. Maybe there's an opportunity here to move back in the draft and still get a future asset, still get a comparable player in terms of quality because of how flat this draft is. And again, pick up that future asset without having to sacrifice quality. So maybe there's movement in that way, just as we see almost every team say, yeah, we're going to look to trade our pick to maybe, add a piece to help right now.
Yeah, absolutely. This came from Christian Clark of the New Orleans Time Picayune. I just like to say that word Picayune because I don't know what that actually means, but it's a fun word.
I'm glad you said it because I'll be honest, I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
I only know it because of the old ESPN fantasy football show. When I used to listen to that with Matthew Berry and Nate Ravitz, they loved the word Picayune, so they would always like make a big deal when some Saints news came out, and it was reported by the Picayune reporter. But anyway, I'll look that up after and update everybody on what a Picayune is. But he reported like this seems like one where I'm parsing the reporting a little bit. If the Pelicans get there, maybe there's nobody they love at 21 in the draft. They may then say, all right, let's go backwards and go do something else. And one of the reasons is they have only one second round pick, period, going forward. So they may look at it and say, if we can get the guy we like still at, I don't making it up, but like 35, let's do that and pick up a couple future seconds down the line. Now we've replenished our draft stock a little bit. They've got first because, as we know, you got the Lakers first next year. They've still got a couple firsts coming from the Bucks, plus a swap. So the Pelicans are flush with first round picks and all of their own picks. But second rounders, I think it's 2030, which is the furthest we are out in drafts right now. That's the first time they have a second round pick because they've traded all the rest of them. So makes sense, I think, to do this if you don't love the guy who's available at 21. But I'll just caution, take somebody to trade up. So that's the other part of it. You got to have a dance partner. And then I'll say too, I think you're right on. Maybe they do look to be aggressive and see an opportunity to move back. But I think trades and free agency, more trades than free agency. I think trades where you'll see them try to be, I don't know that a buyer is the right word, but let's just call it a rebalancer where it is, let's trade Brandon Ingram for something else, because I still don't. I am fairly confident Brandon Ingram's not going to be a Pelican at the start of the year.
They're certainly not a seller. They're not moving Brandon Ingram just to get future assets down the road or something like that. They want stuff that can help them right now. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Picayune is a small coin of little value. Looking at it's a French word, and it means. Yeah, a small coin. It can also mean just generally, not speaking of just a coin, it can mean trivial or of little value.
What a weird thing to name your newspaper.
Right?
the New Orleans of little value. Don't read this news. Like that's the newspapers that are in the checkout line at the grocery store that are like giant UFO gonna, swallow the earth, and then the next week it's like Jesus returned and saved us from giant UFO. Like, I don't know.
Here's synonyms for Picayune: fiddling, Lilliputian, little, petty, piddling, trivial, piffling.
All right.
There you go. There's your word of the day.
For newspaper. That's like the least flattering thing I can think of. Name it. That'd be like if we're like, all right, it's the NBA front office Picayune. Like everything we say is no value. Why do you watch? Like that'd be weird. We're not changing the name. Just in case you were thinking about it, I don't want to change.
Maybe it's like it's self-deprecating. I don't know. I'm sure there's obviously a reason for it.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I just don't know what that is.
Well, look at
All right.
that. There's
Well,
the Mr. Lane popping in the classroom today with a little
that's
history
right.
lesson.
Well,
Love it.
I used to tell my students all the time, I would say, hey, look, one of the things I want you guys to remember is that every day when you wake up, you have in your pocket more information than any of the greatest thinkers in all of human history had access to.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's true
unbelievable.
every single day because the internet keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we got this Google machine. I'm like, all right, I'm going to find out what it means. And now we know.
Perfect. We're a little more educated.
We're all up to date. All right. Let's go to finals injuries. Kristaps Porzingis, what's going on there? I mean, I saw some interesting adjectives being thrown around about this Porzingis injury, it being a rare injury, being a weird injury, things like that. What's happening here with Porzingis?
Yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce, unlike Picayune, I won't try to pronounce all these fancy medical terms. And it was funny because when the Celtics released their press release, which is weird. You don't usually get a press release for an injury update, but obviously they wanted to control that story, I think, to some extent by putting it out. I was like, I don't understand any of the words in here other than dislocation, which is a really scary word.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to call them the Twitter doctors, which are like, and I mean that in a positive light. It's like the people who are actually like sports medicine doctors that like sideline as a Twitter personality. Sure. They all started coming out, and it was the only consensus was this is super rare. This doesn't happen. Like most of them were like, I have a database that goes back 25 years and I have one other instance of an injury like this, or I've in my entire career doing orthopedic work, I've seen this twice, and those kind of things, which can also be kind of scary. And then there were all these ranging, like he's going to need surgery, he probably can't play, all these things too. More recently, as of last night, then into this morning, there seemed to be a groundswell of actually, if they can find tape and the right brace that works, as long as you can get his ankle stable and he can handle the pain, he can play. He won't do any more damage on it. Cue Celtics fans that are old like me saying, yeah, just like Kevin McHale's ankle in the 87 finals, and he was never the same. But if that's the case, the belief is he could probably get out there and play. And then everything is pretty consistent, though. He will likely need surgery in the offseason to correct it. For what it's worth, you were on gate watch, I guess is the best way to call it, where the reporters on the ground in Dallas, they just had their shoot around. Shoot around itself was close to the media, but people saw him walk in, they saw him walk out, and they were like, no noticeable limp. He's got a sleeve on the ankle, but seemed to be walking just fine. Walking obviously far different than running and jumping. My guess is he's going to try to go, and we'll see what it looks like with him. I'm really, I don't know. I have literally no expectations to think he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but sometimes when the most athletic guys can't move, it's way worse than an athletic guy who loses a little bit.
Well, hopefully he'll be okay. I would imagine this is a situation where if it's January, he's not playing.
Oh, 100%.
This is not like that. So yeah, I think the big thing is I hope they're 100% right. If he can't make it worse, like it's just a pain management. Like if it hurts, it hurts, and he's not going to do any kind of serious damage or anything like that. But we'll see. That's certainly going to be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, a lot's going to fall on Al Horford if he's not able to like truly go. I do wonder that too. Is this a situation where we see a guy get out there, where we see him get out there and he runs up and down the floor a few times? I think of like OG Anunoby. With the Knicks, where he ran up and down the floor a few times and you went, oh yeah, he can't really go. I wonder if that's something that we could see here. I would have to imagine the Celtics will be keeping a very, very close eye on him. And if he's not looking right, if it doesn't look like he can contribute, they'll pull him because you don't want to risk something, long-term happening here. If that does become a threat.
Yeah. I've seen people say, just play, like you're 2 wins from a title. Who cares? They have $60 million invested in him over the next 2 seasons. You do not want that to be thrown away. Plus, more importantly, way more importantly, just the health of the player. Like you want him to be okay. And this is not exactly a guy with a great track record of health. I will say this: if he plays, if I'm Dallas, first trip down, second trip, I'm putting him in pick and roll. I'm forcing him to move his feet. Let's see how you're looking. Like let's see if you can stay in front of Kyrie, or let's see if Luka can challenge you. Let's see what you can do trying to stay in front of somebody off the dribble and really test it out and see what it looks like. So we'll find out. Speaking of Luka Doncic, that's the other injury update. We found out after game 2 that he had a pain killing shot before for the thoracic injury. They haven't really told us what that is, whether it's bruised ribs, some kind of other contusion or whatever. It's thoracic contusion, but he had a pain killing injection to play through it. Obviously played pretty well to open the game. He's dealing with knee and ankle stuff too. He's going to have another pain killing injection. It sounds like is the plan before game 3 tonight. Another important thing to note with these injuries, game 4 is Friday. There's not 2 days in between game 3 and 4. There's only the standard kind of 1 day for a playoff series. With that, because there's no travel, and I think it's mostly the lineup TV nights that ABC wants if the series extends. So that's something to keep in mind too. These guys are not going to have a full day of recovery. Then kind of for these players in this spot, a very light practice session or anything like that. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer that we get key guys dealing with stuff at this point of the season, but it is what it is. The season of messy injuries, I guess, has carried all the way through the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. All right, let's jump over. I mentioned OG Anunoby a minute ago. The Knicks could potentially lose Isaiah Hartenstein. Keith, as I recall, if I'm remembering what's going on with the Knicks properly here, they can only offer Hartenstein like 17 million or so.
Yep.
And now the Thunder, they've got 30 plus million in cap space to potentially go spend. I mean, we could see a situation here where the Thunder come in and just make an offer that the Knicks can't touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fear in New York is we can go with 17, offer you maybe a starting spot. We'll see. Probably, I think if you're Isaiah Hartenstein and his crew is Mitchell Robinson will very likely get hurt. That's just unfortunate, but that's what's happened every year. So probably starting. If not, he's going to play big minutes anyway. But we can offer you 17 million in first year salary, like 80 million-ish in that range through 4 years is the most they can go to. And the reason for that is they only have his early bird rights. They did a 2-year deal with him, so they can't offer him a massive contract. So you've got that part of it. But to your point, you got the Thunder sitting there with, hey, we can do 2 years, 40 million, 2 years, 50 million, almost kind of whatever it takes. Sounds like their early buzz out of OKC is that they're going to only offer short-term contracts because I think they know in a couple years they're going to be looking at a lot of money on their books, and it'll be a let's see where we're at decision time. They don't want to have a bunch of extra money tied up if they can avoid it. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, obviously, with these guys. I think, Hartenstein's a really good player. I love the fit in OKC. I love the fit in New York. So, and then, I don't know, does Orlando sneak in there? Could, somebody else pop in there? If Utah, I don't know. Utah would be a little weird, but I don't know. We're hearing they could draft Donovan Clingan, so who knows? But yeah, I mean, you've got these cap space teams that could definitely be players for Hartenstein because he's a very good player.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he was a big part of why the Knicks were able to some degree, sustain despite losing Robinson. Yeah. What's that? Everyone, right? I know.
Player they have.
Say everyone.
By the end, it was Isaiah Hartenstein and a bunch of Lilliputians. I'll use our picky
there you go.
Of the day. A bunch of Lilliputians and Isaiah Hartenstein. He was a Gulliver in
Gulliver's Travels.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, hey, one last thing, little bit of self-promotion. If you want to read a little bit more about Isaiah Hartenstein in the center market, all of my positional previews are up now for Spot Track. I wrote something about all 217 potential free agents, even the two-way guys, the guys who you may not even really know they were on NBA rosters. I wrote about all of them. Two-way guys, I spent a lot of time watching G League film and stuff to understand who they are, which ones could maybe pop on NBA rosters and those kind of things. So those are all up on Spot Track either later today, meaning Wednesday, or tomorrow. My overall top 50 free agent list will release. We will continue to refine that list because right now there's several guys with options that may get picked up and they may not be free agents, but we'll get into all that as we go.
All right, let's get to it. And again, great call out there. Definitely go check that out over on Spot Track. Last thing we've got here, Jimmy Butler. would prefer not to leave the Miami Heat. It's weird. Jimmy Butler in Miami, they're kind of in this dance where, he wants a certain amount of money. He wants an extension. He wants this done while saying, hey, but there's other teams, but I don't really want to leave. But there's other teams, so you need to give me the money, but I don't want to leave. It's just this kind of weird limbo that I think both sides clearly would prefer to work things out. They just have to play the game a little bit here. So I think ultimately Jimmy Butler stays in Miami. I don't think they wind up, parting ways or anything, but it is kind of interesting, this back and forth of maybe the 76ers might be interested, but I really don't want to leave. They need to give him the right number, and then he'll stay.
Yeah, and some of this was sparked by, no pun intended, him being at an LA Sparks game and commenting something. I think it's Cameron Brink wears 22, which is his number for the Sparks. And he said, boy, 22 looks pretty good in purple and gold. Now, as a Lakers guy, I know 22 is not available. No. He would not be able to wear that. Do you know who it's retired for?
Is that Elgin Baylor?
Elgin Baylor, yep.
There you go.
There's a little twist on that, though, which I only just learned when I looked this stuff up over the weekend. Slater Martin also wore 22. It's been raised to honor his service with the Minneapolis Lakers, but not officially retired. It's officially retired for Elgin Baylor. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, little fun to be. There's my history contribution. Mine was basketball related instead of worthwhile. But anyway, they're just playing the game right now, both sides. My guess is something gets done, and he probably stays in Miami because it would just be weird. I know he's not like a lifetime member of the Heat. He hasn't been there for like 15 years or anything. It would just be weird to see him not finish it out in Miami. Like they feel so tied together at this point. I don't know. Weird
personality of the team seems to be kind of intertwined with Jimmy Butler. Yeah, he was even throwing up the LA sign with his fingers and doing all that kind of stuff. But I think we need to keep in mind this is Jimmy Butler doing this. This is not Nikola Jokic suddenly saying, hey, I really want to be in LA or something. This is Jimmy Butler who shows up in costume to media day, which is one of my favorite things. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I think last year we got emo Jimmy. I can't wait to see what we get.
Yeah, it was this year. He had the
that's what I mean.
Like comb over.
Right.
Yeah. With I think he had like the ear studs in or whatever.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what we get this year. But so this is a Jimmy Butler who likes to have some fun, and I think that's all this was.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I guess we could spend time on how could the Lakers trade for him, but I don't know. It was very funny. I was listening to another very popular podcast that was spent a lot of time talking about, I don't know, maybe he's sending down signals and all those kind of things. And I was like, as I know you spent a lot of time talking to people about trades between teams that might be dancing around the first apron are going to be very hard. And that's where both the Heat and the Lakers are living right now. So barring some other involvement somewhere, it would be difficult to pull this one off. Let's just say that. So I don't know that that's what's happening here, but hey, if it is, great. Let's go. I welcome all the chaos and goofiness we can have at this time of year. But
we're 2 weeks away from the draft. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? 2 weeks from the draft.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, let's be clear. The first day of the draft, because
that's right.
Now we have two day draft. But yeah, it is crazy. This weekend, just for people who like such things, this Sunday, the 16th, is the deadline for players to opt out of the draft. The final deadline, the NCAA deadline, already happened. So this is mostly for overseas players who would come in as early entry candidates. Some of them come in, they get their feedback, and then they go back to playing in Europe. And some of these guys will enter the draft 2-3 times. But there's that's what this Sunday is. Sunday's the last day. So come Monday, we'll have here's your official draft eligible list that will come out. It'll be a handful of guys will come off the list as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, we made it through.
We did.
Obviously, we've got tons going on in the world of the NBA, so make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. Check out the Basketball Bulletin. You guys can find that, basketballbulletin.substack.com. I'll put a link in the description down below. Till next time, everybody. See ya, and stay safe.